Hello and welcome to In Depth. I'm Tina Jha. Mexican drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, believed to be one of the most powerful and notorious criminals, was sentenced to life imprisonment by a US court on the 17th of July. He was found guilty on 10 charges, including drug trafficking as well as money laundering. The US federal court tacked 30 years onto the sentence and ordered El Chapo to pay $12.6 billion in forfeiture, a sum based on a conservative estimate of revenues from his cartel sales in the United States of America. And given his history of prison breaks, Guzman is now expected to serve out his sentence in the country's most secure federal prison in Florence, Colorado. The drug war in Mexico, pitting the Mexican and US authorities against cartels, smuggling drugs into the US, and the cartels against each other as well, has killed more than 1 lakh people over more than a decade. Today in Depth, we talk about El Chapo, the notorious drug lord who gained folklore status in his over 30-year-long criminal career. His journey from the mountains in Sinaloa in northern Mexico to becoming the world's biggest drug kingpins and the highest profile Mexican drug cartel boss so far to stand trial in the US. Besides, we also talk about why this trial was significant in view of the drug war in Mexico that has killed about 1 lakh people in more than a decade. So law has finally caught up with Mexican drug lord El Chapo. A federal court in the United States has sentenced Joaquin El Chapo Guzman to life in prison plus an additional 30 years. The keenly watched high-profile trial that lasted 11 weeks has given people a detailed look at the working of the Mexican drug cartel.
Mexican drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman headed the Sinaloa cartel. The cartel was one of Mexico's most violent drug trafficking organizations and the largest supplier of drugs to the United States. The federal court in Brooklyn sentenced 62-year-old Guzman to life in prison plus 30 years, with U.S. District Judge Brian Cogan accusing him of overwhelming evil. Cogan also ordered Guzman to forfeit $12.6 billion. Guzman was sentenced to mandatory life in prison. The additional 30 years are for unlawful use of firearms. Guzman was found guilty of 10 charges, including drug trafficking and money laundering in New York in February. He was also charged with engaging in multiple murder conspiracies.
United States District Judge Brian Cogan sentenced Joaquin El Chapo Guzman to life without the possibility of parole plus 30 years. This sentence is significant and it is well deserved. It means that never again will Guzman pour poison over our borders, making billions while innocent lives are lost to drug violence and drug addiction. We cannot undo the violence, misery, and devastation inflicted on countless individuals and communities by the drugs that Mr. Guzman and his organization inflicted on our country for more than 2 decades. But we can ensure that he spends every minute of every day of the rest of his life in a prison here in the United States.
The long road that led Chapo Guzman from the mountains of Sinaloa to the courthouse behind us today was paved with death, drugs, and destruction. But it ended today with justice. Mr. Guzman thought for more than 25 years that he was untouchable, that there was no problem affecting the Sinaloa cartel that he couldn't bribe, intimidate, torture, or kill his way out of. But thanks to the hard work of the men and women of federal law enforcement, the offices of the individuals who are standing with me and behind me, justice was done today for the American people.
Several shocking details emerged during the 11-week trial in which over a dozen former associates of El Chapo turned witnesses. One of them claimed that former Mexican President Enrique Pena Nieto, who served from 2012 to 2018, accepted a $100 million bribe from El Chapo for ending a manhunt against him. Nieto hasn't, however, commented on the allegation yet.
Culminó. Cerramos el libro, el capítulo de Joaquin el Chapo Guzmán. Con la sentencia hoy, el señor Guzmán pasará el resto de sus días en una prisión federal aquí en los Estados Unidos.
Before he was finally captured in 2016, Guzman escaped maximum security prisons in Mexico twice. He was extradited to the United States to face trial in January 2017. After his sentencing, Guzman's lawyers said he did not get a fair trial.
All we had asked for at the beginning was a fair trial. I'm not here to tell you that Joaquin Guzman is a saint. I'm not here to tell you that what occurred, that the witnesses were unusual than any other American trial. All we asked for was fairness.
Guzman, whose nickname means Shorty, had a folk hero-like reputation in Sinaloa, where people seemed divided over the verdict.
Pues creo que es una sentencia que ya se veía venir y pues es algo realmente justo por el daño que él ha hecho a la sociedad sinaloense.
Bueno, yo de lo que he escuchado que fue una buena persona, ayudó mucho a Culiacán, aquí a su tierra, que es Sinaloa, y a mucha gente le ha ayudado y mucha gente lo quiere.
Guzman is currently being held in solitary confinement in the Metropolitan Correctional Center, a fortress-like jail in Lower Manhattan. Last month, U.S. District Judge Brian Cogan rejected his request for more time to exercise on the jail's roof after prosecutors feared he could try to escape. Guzman became a drug trafficker in the 1980s. He was known for digging tunnels under the US-Mexico border that allowed him to smuggle drugs more quickly than his rivals, eventually making him the Sinaloa Cartel's best-known leader. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And let's now take a look at the life of Joaquin Guzman, better known as El Chapo. The Mexican drug lord is one of the biggest kingpins running a drug cartel in the world with property worth billions of dollars. During his 3-decade career as a smuggler, Guzman, whose nickname means Shorty, developed a reputation as a Robin Hood-like figure that made him a folk hero to many in his home state of Sinaloa, where he was born into a poor mountain village. Before he was finally captured in the year 2016, Guzman twice escaped maximum security prisons in his country, Mexico. He was extradited to the United States to face trial in January 2017. Mexico's most notorious drug lord, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, was born in 1957 into a poor family in a rural area of La Tuna in Sinaloa, northwest Mexico. He was the oldest of 7 children. His parents earned their living from farming. Officially, his father was a cattle rancher, but is believed to have been an opium poppy farmer, which is what gave Guzman a taste for narcotics from a young age. During his adolescence, he earned himself the nickname El Chapo, Mexican slang for Shorty, because he was just 5 foot 6 inches tall and was stocky in build. El Chapo's first organized crime was at the age of 15. He dropped out of school and started his own marijuana plantation with 4 of his distant cousins. His father kicked him out of the house, after which El Chapo left his hometown to seek his fortune in drug smuggling. Former cartel kingpin Hector El Güero Palma gave Guzman his first break in Guadalajara in the late 1970s when he oversaw a shipment of drugs from the Sierra Madre Mountains. According to Malcolm Beat's book, The Last Narco, Guzman was ambitious and eager to increase the quantities of drugs being transported. He was also a no-nonsense person who would execute employees himself if deliveries were late. In the 1980s, Guzman was introduced to Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, known as the godfather of the Guadalajara cartel, who put him in charge of handling logistics. When Felix Gallardo was arrested in 1989, his cartel's drug trafficking territories were divided among different factions, later known as the Federation. Guzman set up his own Sinaloa cartel with other traffickers in northwest Mexico. In the 1990s, Guzman pioneered the use of sophisticated underground tunnels to move drugs across the border to the United States. When the United States of America started shutting down ports of entry in the Atlantic and Pacific in the 1990s, drugs had to go through Mexico. And if it had to go through Mexico, it had to go through El Chapo. With time, Guzman's cartel became one of the biggest traffickers of drugs to the US. In 2009, he entered the Forbes list of the world's richest men at number 701, with an estimated worth of $1 billion. Guzman's wealth and empire grew by leaps and bounds, and so did scrutiny from law enforcement agencies. The Drug Enforcement Administration was after him, as his cartel operated in 5 continents and carried out the biggest drug operation in the world. In 1993, a Roman Catholic cardinal was shot dead in a turf war with rival drug smugglers. Guzman was among those held responsible for the crime, and a bounty was placed on his head by the Mexican government. Within weeks, he was arrested in Guatemala and sentenced to 20 years in prison on charges of conspiracy, drug trafficking, and bribery. According to news reports, Guzman enjoyed a life of luxury even inside prison, smuggling in cocaine and women through bribes and intimidation. In January 2001, he broke out of jail, reportedly in a laundry car. After 13 years on the run, Guzman was captured by Mexican Marines in February 2014. But in July 2015, he broke free once again. This time, his accomplices used GPS to burrow a 1.5-kilometer tunnel that led directly underneath his cell in central Mexico. His freedom, however, was short-lived. In January 2016, Guzman was tracked down to a house in an affluent part of Los Mochis in northern Sinaloa. 5 of Guzman's guards were killed in the raid by Mexican Marines, and he managed to flee out of a manhole but was caught while leaving the town. 1 year later, he was extradited to the US. In his more than 30-year-long criminal career, Guzman is believed to have earned more than $14 billion in cash proceeds from narcotic sales, according to the US Department of Justice. The Forbes also removed him from its billionaire rankings over verification concerns of his assets. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. Time for a short break on the program. When we return, we talk about the Mexican drug trade. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching In Depth. Mexican drug trafficking organizations have existed for several decades. Their influence increased after the demise of the Colombian, Cali, and Medellin cartels in the 1990s. Mexican drug cartels now dominate the wholesale illicit drug market and in the year 2007 controlled 90% of the cocaine entering the United States of America. Now, with the recent proceedings, Guzman may be gone, but the cartels are not. Let's take a look at Mexico's drug trade and major cartels that lead the market today.
Mexican drug traffickers are the largest foreign suppliers of heroin, methamphetamines, and cocaine to the United States. They are also responsible for most of the heroin and methamphetamine production. Cocaine is largely produced in Bolivia, Colombia, and Peru, and it is transported through Mexico. Mexican cartels are also known to make fentanyl, a synthetic drug much more potent than heroin. The cartels also smuggle vast quantities of marijuana into the United States. But with the legalization of marijuana in some states of the US and Canada, the cartels have turned their focus on harder drugs like heroin. Heroin production increased by 37% between 2016 and 2017 and continues to rise. Over the past decades, Mexican drug cartels have grown and battled each other for territory. The oldest is the Sinaloa cartel led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. It is one of Mexico's most influential cartels. With strongholds along Mexico's Pacific coast, it commanded the highest share of Mexico's global drug market. But El Chapo's sentencing could change all that. The Jalisco cartel splintered from the Sinaloa cartel in 2010. Using extraordinary violence, it expanded rapidly. The Juarez cartel is a long-standing rival of the Sinaloa cartel. It has its stronghold in the north-central state of Chihuahua, across the border from New Mexico and Texas. The Gulf cartel is based in the northeastern state of Tamaulipas. After its leaders were arrested in recent years, the influence of the organization diminished. The Los Zetas broke away from the Gulf cartel in 2010 and held power over areas of eastern, central and southern Mexico. It was originally a paramilitary group for the Gulf cartel. In 2007, the US called it the most technologically advanced, sophisticated and violent group. The Beltran-Leyva brothers split from the Sinaloa cartel in 2008. Since then, they have partnered with the Juarez cartel and the Los Zetas. All four Beltran-Leyva brothers have been arrested or killed, but their loyalists operate throughout Mexico. Before his capture, El Chapo's Sinaloa cartel was the dominant player in the market. After his capture in 2014, the struggle to challenge Sinaloa's dominance in the business intensified. It has triggered a drug war and murders. The US says this is the problem with targeting the kingpins. Kingpins may fall, new ones will rise, but the drug trafficking continues. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And that's all we have for you in today's edition of In Depth. We'll be back same time tomorrow with an analysis on a different subject. You can also watch our program online on YouTube and Twitter on the link given below on your screens. You can also send your feedback and suggestions about our program. Take care and see you again tomorrow.